Alright, what's going on, guys? Myth Wukong is my game of the year, and it's really not even close. I knew this game was going to be good ever since the first time they showed gameplay, but now that I've actually been playing through it, and at the point I'm at now, I'm at about 60 hours and only halfway done, it's almost unbelievable the level of quality, storytelling, and adventure that I've gotten from it. And I need to tell you guys about it because while this is going to be an extremely subjective video, I think the things that Wukong does best haven't been getting talked about. The conversation about this game has been stuck on the first chapter, and I would wager that's where a lot of the reviews ended up as well. Now, I know a lot of people on this channel decided to pass over this game, so let's dive in to exactly why I think you need to be playing it. When early impressions of Myth Wukong came out, one of the common talking points that you would have heard is that the game is a fairly linear boss rush, and several people that I've talked to that decided to give Wukong a try heard that going in, and then played the first chapter, and then dropped the game. And I will say, they're not wrong for thinking that, because that is how Chapter 1 is set up. You are on guardrails with the paths, going in a straight line much of the time, and fighting bosses back to back to back. And while there are a handful of secrets to find in Chapter 1, you're not that rewarded for your exploration. And until you get that first relic of Sun Wukong and jump into Chapter 2, you're not going to see what the game is really like. However, the rest of this game after Chapter 1 is unbelievably vast. Chapter 2 pulls away the guardrails, and you have a pretty wide open area to go with several branching paths. And you'll feel it after you get to the first boss of Chapter 2, when you realize that there were giant areas before then that you didn't explore, because you were playing it the same way you played Chapter 1. And the further you get, the more it expands. I sunk probably 20 hours into Chapter 2, and I'm still going back and finding things that I missed during that time. And somehow, as the game progressed, the chapters become even bigger. There's almost an overwhelming amount of content in this game, and I didn't believe it at first. But once I started exploring every area, combing every single inch, I started finding hidden bosses, entire NPC quest lines that I had walked right past, secrets hidden in plain sight. You almost can't throw a stone in this game without hitting some kind of secret. When I say overwhelming amount of content, that's not an exaggeration. That's genuinely how I'm feeling every time I find something I missed. And again, that's not something you'll feel in Chapter 1. Which could be levied as a criticism of the game onboarding you into its world, and giving players that initial feeling that it's going to be linear, but I personally like the surprise of it, and the game rewards you very well for finding these secrets. Every single chapter has an entire secret area, which will give you new spells, upgrades, key items against the final bosses of the chapter. Even one of the game's main hubs is hidden behind an NPC you can very easily just walk past. And no exaggeration, those kinds of things are around every single corner. I also have to sing the game's praises when it comes to its cinematography and the cutscenes because all of them feel like a movie. The camera work on these is fantastic, and even for very minor cutscenes, they did not have to go this hard. I'm not gonna lie, it's made me addicted to this game, and I'm normally someone that prefers less cutscenes in my games. I'd rather just play it. But for as much gameplay as Myth Wukong gives you, it makes these sequences feel like rewards rather than interruptions. And I think this is a large part of why I've been so invested in this story, even though I've only read about half of Journey to the West and I'm unfamiliar with a lot of the mythology and traditions involved. And that's not even to mention the conclusions of each of the chapters with their little mini movies, all with different types of production. You've got the hand-drawn ones, the stop motion, the anime one, and I think the main thing that it communicated to me as the player was the passion that went into creating this game. It's just rare to see this level of effort nowadays, and you can tell that heart and soul went into creating it and that the people behind it really care about sharing this story with a wider audience. And I'm also addicted to the boss fights of this game. And I know that some people have given the game the criticism that combat gets repetitive, and I understand why they feel that way. The weapon and abilities you have don't really change, although you do have a few options. The way you approach combat is generally going to be the same each time. But what's offset that, for me at least, is how unique every boss is. And this game has a crazy number of bosses, including the mini bosses. And at least so far in the game, I've never gotten to a point where I feel like I've been fighting the same thing over and over. The game does do a really good job in variety. You may have a few humanoid bosses, and then a creature style fight, and then one big boss, and then a Luong or something to shake it up. It's never the same thing over and over and over again. And what helps add to that variety is a variety in difficulty. There haven't been a lot of brick walls, and that's helped by the chapters after Chapter 1 being so expansive. You can go elsewhere, find a secret area you may have missed, and get new upgrades. And I have to admit, after playing Souls games for so long, I'm kind of enjoying not every boss kicking my teeth in, but there are still plenty of bosses that will, and that rewarding feeling upon accomplishment is absolutely there. It's paced well, so you're not having to suffer every single time to get to the next story beat. So there's a really good balance of challenge and fun. You get the best of both worlds here. And generally speaking, most of the bosses, if not all of them, are worth your time to fight. Whether they drop a spirit, unlock new weapons or armor to craft, or are part of an NPC questline, there was never a point where I felt like I wasted my time struggling with a boss and then eventually beating it. And I think that aspect has helped me play this game continually for a long time, generally without getting bored. Because there's always something new to find, and I'm never stuck in the same spot for too long. So I don't think the game as a whole feels like a boss rush, but I still enjoy the frequency. And I know the sheer number of bosses may be too much for some people. This is just how I'm feeling. Especially after the latest patch of the game, which fixed almost all of the performance issues I was having. Black Myth Wukong sets a new standard for games for me. And I know it seems like I'm singing nothing but praises for this game, and that is the entire point of this video, but I really like it. It's honestly one of the best games I've ever played in my opinion, and I think it very easily takes the Game of the Year spot for me. I know very little people are going to agree with me on this, but I like it more than Elden Ring DLC. Now, DLCs don't usually get qualified for Game of the Year, but if it came down to it, I'd vote Wukong. I do think it's that good. Now, 2024 hasn't been a bad year for games at all, but when compared to the competition, I could very easily see Black Myth Wukong winning Game of the Year, even without my biased opinion. Dragon's Dogma 2 was a pretty good game this year, although I've played the first Dragon's Dogma since then, and it made me realize how little they actually innovated on. Space Marine could be in the running, Tekken 8 maybe. I've heard Like a Dragon and Final Fantasy were good, although I haven't played them, but there isn't really a game this year that stands out among the rest in the way that I think Wukong does. I know the word is overused, but I think epic is the perfect way to describe this game as a whole. And what more do we want from a single player game than to give us a grand adventure like this? Not only that, but bringing a culture and mythology to life that's generally underrepresented over here in the West. I'm a sucker for games that can teach me something about the world, typically history or mythology, beyond the scope of the game. And I've been super fascinated with Journey to the West since playing Wukong, and it's a very cool story. I am going to be making several lore videos, which I think will be a lot of fun since these characters aren't from the game itself, and we have a lot more to dive into. But I just had to come on here and talk about this today. This game is so good, man. If you were someone that passed it up, definitely give it a second look. And if you're craving a grand adventure, then I can think of no better game to pass your time. But y'all let me know, have you played Black Myth Wukong yet? Are you someone that's beaten the game? And if so, what was your final rating of it? Like I said, I'm only about halfway through so far, already 50 hours in. There's just so much content. But also, aside from Black Myth Wukong, what other games do you think could have a shot at Game of the Year? Either way though, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a like on it and subscribe if you're new around here. But with all that, I will catch you in the next one.